It was a night that started like any other, with laughter that felt borrowed and smiles that didn't belong to me. The air was heavy with the scent of uncertainty, yet I pretended not to notice. My boyfriend sat beside me, his voice soft, his hand resting gently on mine, and for a moment, I believed I could escape the life I had built. But the truth has a way of finding you when you least expect it. The door opened, and in the dim light, my husband stood there, silent, frozen, his eyes searching mine for an answer he already knew. I felt the blood drain from my face, my heart sinking deep into the floor. Time didn't move, it shattered. Every second stretched into eternity as the weight of betrayal filled the room. The air turned cold, and my body trembled, not from fear of being caught, but from the realization of what I had done. His gaze wasn't anger, it was pain, deep and quiet, the kind that breaks you without a word. My mind screamed for an explanation, but my voice was gone, stolen by guilt and disbelief. I wanted to turn back time, to undo every step that led me here, but life doesn't grant mercy to those who run from their own hearts. In that moment, I saw everything we once were, our laughter, our promises, our dreams fade like smoke. My boyfriend shifted beside me, his face pale, lost, and I realized that this wasn't love anymore. It was escape, fragile and false. The silence between the three of us became unbearable, thick with unspoken truths. I wanted to reach out, to say something, anything, but every word I could think of sounded hollow. My husband's eyes glistened with tears he refused to shed, and I knew I had just changed the course of 3 lives forever. When love turns into a mirror of guilt, it shows you the parts of yourself you never wanted to see. I once believed love was about finding comfort, a place to rest when the world became too heavy, but I never realized that comfort can turn into confusion, and affection can blur the line between right and wrong. Every moment I spent with him felt like a secret painted in borrowed light, beautiful yet fleeting. I told myself it was harmless, that I deserved to feel seen, but deep down, I knew I was building something fragile on the edge of truth. The laughter we shared started to sound like echoes of denial, and every touch carried a quiet ache. I would look at him and wonder why my heart beat faster, and then look away, afraid of what it meant. At home, I carried that guilt like a shadow, pretending everything was fine, pretending that my heart wasn't divided. I smiled at my husband, but it was a practiced smile, one that hid the storm brewing inside me. The guilt didn't scream, it whispered. It whispered when I woke up, when I laughed, when I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. It wasn't the kind of guilt that comes from being caught, but the kind that grows from within, that eats away at your peace and leaves you hollow. I tried to convince myself that love had led me here, that I was following my heart, but the truth was that I was running from loneliness, from silence, from myself. And when the mirror finally cracked, when I saw the reflection of my choices staring back at me, I realized love isn't always a gift. Sometimes it's a test, one that reveals how easily we can lose ourselves when we stop listening to what's right and start chasing what feels good for a moment. The silence that night was louder than any argument, heavier than any truth I had ever faced. When my husband stood there, words seemed useless, meaningless, powerless against the storm in his eyes. There was no shouting, no chaos, just a silence that wrapped itself around the room like a punishment. It was the kind of silence that doesn't need explanation because it already knows. I could hear the sound of my own breathing, sharp and uneven, echoing in the stillness, and I wished he would say something, anything, to break the unbearable quiet. But he didn't. He just looked at me, and in that look, I saw everything I had destroyed. My heart ached with the weight of 1,000 unsaid things, memories we once shared, promises we once made. The silence between us was a reflection of everything that had gone wrong long before that night, the distance that had been growing, the words left unspoken, the pain left unattended. I tried to reach for him, but even that small movement felt wrong, like a gesture that belonged to another lifetime. My boyfriend sat still, his face pale, his guilt visible, but it didn't matter anymore because nothing could fix what was broken. The silence swallowed every excuse I wanted to make, every justification I had rehearsed in my mind. It was as if the universe had paused, forcing me to face the truth without the comfort of noise. In that silence, I realized that betrayal doesn't always explode. It can sit quietly, suffocating everything in its path. I felt tears building in my chest, not just for the pain I caused him, but for the part of myself that I could never reclaim. That silence wasn't just between us, it lived inside me, echoing through every thought, every heartbeat, reminding me that sometimes words aren't needed to destroy something. Sometimes all it takes is silence. The breaking point between heart and mistake isn't a moment you see coming. It's something that creeps up on you quietly, hidden beneath every choice you tried to justify. That night, standing between two people who had both known different versions of me, I felt the line blur between love and regret. My heart was racing, torn between what it wanted and what it had destroyed. I had told myself stories to make it all seem less wrong, that I was unloved, unseen, misunderstood, but in that moment, none of those excuses mattered. The truth stood there, raw and undeniable. My husband's eyes held questions I couldn't answer, and my boyfriend's silence spoke of guilt we both shared. I realized then that love can be cruel when it's built on broken promises. It doesn't save you. It traps you between desire and duty, between what feels right and what is right. My chest tightened as I watched everything unravel, every memory, every secret, every moment of false comfort turning into ashes. My mind replayed the first time I met my boyfriend, the way his laughter felt like freedom, how his attention made me forget my loneliness. But now that same feeling felt poisoned, tainted by the cost it carried. The breaking point wasn't just being caught, it was realizing I couldn't live with the person I had become. My husband didn't need to speak. His silence was enough to show me how deep the wound went. It wasn't only his trust one had broken, it was mine too. The line between love and mistake had vanished, leaving only the wreckage of choices I couldn't undo. In that moment, I understood that sometimes the heart doesn't lead you to happiness. Sometimes it leads you straight into the consequences you were too afraid to face. When forgiveness feels impossible, it's not always because of others. It's because of the war inside your own heart. In the days that followed, the weight of what happened pressed down on me like a shadow that never lifted. I wanted to apologize, to fall to my knees and beg for a second chance, but every time I tried, the words felt too small to hold the pain I had caused. My husband's silence became a mirror for my own guilt, reflecting everything I didn't want to see. He didn't scream, didn't curse, didn't demand answers. He just withdrew into a quietness that hurt more than any punishment. I watched him move through the house like a stranger, his presence cold, his eyes empty, and I knew I had broken something sacred. I told myself that time might heal, that maybe one day he would forgive me, but deep down, I feared he never could. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't just about saying, "I forgive you," it's about learning to breathe again after betrayal has stolen your air. I wanted to forgive myself, too, but that was even harder. Every reflection, every sound, every thought brought me back to that night, to the look in his eyes, to the version of me I never wanted to be. I tried to justify it, to tell myself I was lost, that I made a mistake out of pain, but the truth doesn't fade when you whisper lies to it. It stays, it lingers, it burns quietly beneath your skin. I started to understand that forgiveness isn't a gift you receive, it's a choice you earn, one breath, one day, one regret at a time. And some wounds don't close, not because they can't, but because a part of you knows you don't deserve them to. That's the hardest part, living with the memory and learning to exist with the silence of a heart that no longer believes in redemption. Learning who I truly was beneath the chaos became the hardest journey I ever took. When everything fell apart, when love, lies, and truth collided in a single moment, I was forced to face the woman I had become. For so long, I had defined myself through others, through the way my husband looked at me, through the comfort my boyfriend gave me, through the image I tried to protect in front of the world. But when the noise faded, when everyone walked away, all that remained was me. The silence was terrifying because it left me nowhere to hide. I started to see the cracks in my soul, the emptiness I had been trying to fill with affection that wasn't mine to take. I realized I had mistaken attention for love and escape for freedom. The chaos I blamed on circumstances was actually born from within me, from wounds I never healed, from insecurities I never faced. Each night, I replayed that moment, not to relive the pain, but to understand why I let it happen. The truth was uncomfortable. It wasn't about love or betrayal. It was about a woman who forgot her worth and searched for it in someone else's eyes. Slowly, I began to see that healing doesn't come from being forgiven by others, but by forgiving yourself for not knowing better. The process was brutal, full of tears, silence, and memories that refused to fade, but it was real. I learned that self-discovery isn't gentle. It breaks you before it rebuilds you. Beneath the mistakes, beneath the guilt, I found pieces of myself I had buried long ago: strength, honesty, and the ability to start again. I learned that chaos can be a teacher, that pain can strip you of illusions until you finally meet the person you were always meant to be.